When we think about difficult behaviors, very seldom are we thankful. Most of the time, understandably, we just want those behaviors to stop. So much parenting information suggests that we ignore or we punish behaviors if we don't like them and that it is supposed to make changes. But behaviors actually give us clues about the things that have happened to us earlier in our lives that we are trying to heal. What if we could bring curiosity into the behaviors we see in ourselves and in our loved ones? Would that give us more space to actually see the behaviors for what they are and to find some gratitude for them? I'm This is guiding principle number 4. Behaviors occur on a continuum. Behaviors in children and adults correlate to the parent's own neural development and attachment status, which is a mouthful. But what I want you to hear about that is that basically on one end of the continuum, you've got people who are very calm, flexible, relatable, empathetic, easy to connect with. Hopefully, you know maybe one or two people like that. On the other end of the continuum, you've got people who are rigid, cold, lacking empathy, and difficult to connect with. Hopefully, you don't know too many people like this, but you probably know at least one or two. The people who are easier to connect with have either had most of their early needs met and were likely easier babies and children because they were easier, it was easier to meet their needs, and or they've done their healing work. The people who are more difficult to connect with often have had difficult experiences without enough support, which is very different than they're just a pain. I can't believe what a horrible person they are, blah, 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 blah. It takes the judgment out of it. The people who are more difficult to connect with have often had difficult experiences without enough support, either starting with difficult experiences in the womb, at birth, or in early life, or experienced trauma later and either didn't have support or didn't have adequate support to heal in relationship. And I would also have to say that a lot of these difficult people did have very early trauma, and it may or may not have been identified because it sets a spiral of patterns into effect, and then we're going to loop on it, which is what we'll talk about in just a couple principles. Most people aren't at either extreme, but really somewhere in the middle. So the behaviors that we see from adults and children isn't just this is how a 10-year-old or a 40-year-old should behave, but it's a complex communication of previous experiences, unmet needs, met needs, communication of previous experiences, and the relationship patterns that we had when we were growing up. We are going to repeat them unconsciously without realizing it unless we bring them into consciousness, which is a lot of what we're going to be doing together. Patterns of behavior actually begin in the womb as imprints on the nervous system and as imprints on the person. Other experiences, including birth and early life, have an impact on our behavioral patterns. And if you took my course on my second book, which is Creating Connection, where we talked a lot about imprints and early experiences, you have more of an idea of what I'm talking about when I say that. So we're going to repeat those patterns and they become our habits, for better or for worse. So when we begin to understand that behaviors are more complex than just learning to do something different, it isn't just, I'll just set my mind to it and I'll do it. Sometimes it takes more than that. But we have more compassion and more space for one another and our journey to wholeness. Our behaviors give us clues about our earlier experiences, and we can work on them in present time with other willing people. So one person may have learned that relationships are dangerous, and anytime someone tries to get close, they become very defensive and attack. Another person may have learned that others are safe, and when they have a challenge, they reach out for help and support. These are the patterns that I'm talking about. Others will avoid feelings or certain topics and pretend that there isn't anything wrong when there clearly is something wrong, while some are very anxious and will cling in a relationship. These are all patterns that start actually really young. And these are all examples of unmet and met needs and how those patterns all show up for us later. So I would encourage you just to take a moment and think about, what are the patterns that you see in your relationships? And maybe not just in one, but maybe with your partner, maybe with your child, maybe with your friends, maybe with, your aunts and uncles. What are the patterns? What do you do when you are stressed in particular? That's when these patterns really, really show up. So we'll be back with principle number 5. Consider bringing in some curiosity and wonderment to your own behaviors this next week. Those behaviors are there for a reason, and they provide clues for you about things that are undone and may need a little extra support and love. It may not be right away, but you can get to a place where you can find gratitude for your story, for your experiences, and for your behaviors, and the behaviors of those you love. I'd love to hear what happens when you create some space for curiosity about behaviors. Share in the comments. I'm Rebecca Thompson Hitt, and you've been listening to the All Relationships Can Heal podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with Fun Friday.